There's a certain amount of logistics involved with doing powertrain work. A little bit of rigging, lots of moving, getting stuff situated. In this particular case, I've got 5 engines sitting over here, 4 on the floor and 1 on a stand. So it helps to have a couple of chains. Like I've got 1 chain tied up on the radiator. I had 1 chain tied up on this motor. I got a little short section of chain there, and I got another chain in my toolbox. So this engine is going to go in that chassis. This engine is going to go back in that crate, and then they'll get forklifted back to parts. But I want to take some parts off this to have a look inside of it. So before I set it in the crate, I'm going to take that bottom row of oil pan bolts off so I can get the cover off, because I'll just do that in the crate there, and we'll look and see why this thing's so out of time. Get a good look at it. This engine has got to go back, this engine has got to go back into the crate it came in, because they are coming to get it and bring me another one. Then that'll go in the crate eventually, and the replacement engine will go in that truck over there on the other side of the green one. And then eventually something will happen with that thing. So yeah, this engine's ready to go in. And we have a unique opportunity being able to put this in and see exactly what's going on compared to normal. Normally we can't see because everything's in the way. So I'll take you along and show you what I do, just the process I go through. I'm a firm believer in prep work. I spend more time on prep than actual, doing the job. Like for instance, cleaning the crud off of this starter shim. Same goes with these manifolds. So down here it's not too bad, but up in a salt state, if you get a little blob of crusty on there, it's difficult to repair that once you're in the vehicle, because your pipe's going to be about this far away. So I clean these off, and I clean the mating flanges on the converters. So this is what I was talking about with the wiring harness. It goes down to here, and it threads through this motor mount, and that's very difficult to squeeze through there. So first thing I'm going to do is line up our torque converter to the ring gear. And with a 6-stud converter, if it's completely closed up and you can't see it, then you basically got to have the studs across from each other, which is difficult to line up. It's difficult to visualize. It's a lot easier to visualize 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock than 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. I mean, you get your head kind of twisted like that trying to look at it or something like that. So I'm going to bring this up to, this is our index mark. I'm going to bring it up to here. Let's see, that'll put us at 3 and 9. I'm going to leave it about where it's at, because we're going to put this guy at 12. And then we'll bring that guy up to 12. Get that lined up. And even though it has a transfer case on it, it's pretty level. And this obviously hangs perfect with this bracket. You can't beat that bracket. So let's get set up and put her in there. I can access this torque converter stud because there's nothing under here. I can see it really easily. So that's why I'm doing the 12 and 6 o'clock. I always want to make sure the converter didn't jump out of its pilot, out of its the front pump there. So first things first, there's one thing that's out of our control, especially if you have a chain going from corner to corner of the engine. Having the engine sit, I don't know what this is here, from left to right centered is difficult. The fore and aft, we can control that, and I'll show you. We don't really need to on this one because it's just about right. We may have to do a little bit, but I can put a ratchet strap on this engine and go from the front of the engine to the boom, and I can make this, I can make this do anything I want. But this here, it's difficult to control even with a ratchet strap. But one thing we definitely can control is coming in dead center, and we're just a little bit off, and this crane's so big we're hitting the suspension, so I got to bring it over just a little bit more because we don't want to fight with that once we get in place. Alright, before I go any further, I want to take this oil filter off. You're supposed to take this oil filter and cooler off before you put it in, but we don't have to because we can raise the engine straight up and down, whereas in chassis you wouldn't be able to do that as easily. But I want to make sure that oil cooler's tight because they may not have tightened it knowing that I'm supposed to take it off. Now I would prime this filter, but they sent this engine full of oil and it's overfull to account for the filter. So if I prime it, I just gotta take it off and pump it. So at least that was. So now I don't have to worry about it. You get too loose, it'll leak, but if it gets loose enough, it could, when the filters comes off, it could pull the insert out with it. Because the insert's what holds that on, but the filter screws too. I'll leave the filter off so I don't have to worry about damaging it on the frame. I'm going to roll it back a little bit. Alright, so take a look at what I'm looking at here. And if you look at the angle of the engine to the transmission, they're a little like that. Not much, but a little bit. So let's put a ratchet strap on the front of the engine and get the angle a little better. That way I can just plop it in, get some bolts on the bell housing, and then set it into the engine mounts. Now once I've got our dowels are started, I don't want this thing to jump back out of here. If I get to jostling the motor around, it may jump back out of there, so I'm going to put some bolts in it. And the bolts that go through the dowels on each side, they're longer than the rest of them. See that? So it's important. There's less thread that they start into because of that hollow dowel. We'll just start this and bring it up to where it touches the bell housing. We'll do the other with the other side, and then we'll check our torque converter and we'll see if it's lined up. Don't think you're going to be able to see the torque converter. Matter of fact, I got to use a mirror to see it. So we're going to give her a little push. Push the whole crane kind of back toward the transmission. So how good my skills are with a mirror. Guess I don't need a mirror. It looks like you can see it. Just barely. Got a little bit of a turtle head thing going there. With the stud. Yeah, I can't get down in here. Anyway, starting to stick through. Let's bring the bolts up a little tighter. Now we're hung up on this dowel. It had a lot of paint on it. I sanded it off, but we're still hung on, so we're going to have to pull this in with the bolts. You know, it'll be fine. That's why I'm just using a 1/4-inch ratchet, not a 3/4 impact. Just draw this in, get her seated up. So the converter is actually loose. I just gave it the old thunk test. Don't want to get it bound up in there. Alright. Some of them you can just push right in. This one wasn't the case, but that's okay. Everything's good. I'm going to grab the torque converter again. And if you listen, that's what we're after. The converter's not trapped. It's not bound up. Let's see if you can see it now. There's the stud. I was looking way down there earlier, sorry. So there's the stud sticking through. Some people don't like them. I mean, that's all I've dealt with forever, is Fords and torque converter studs. I don't have a problem with it. They do okay for me. I'm just going to give these bolts a little extra torque. And then we're going to sit it on the motor mounts. First thing I'm going to do is release the ratchet strap. We don't need that anymore, and that'll cause major problems if we leave that in place. Now we've got to get this thing to line up with our studs in our frame for the motor mounts, and at the same time make sure that stud does not slip into there. So we got a little bit of a, we gotta pay attention to a lot of stuff here. So the first thing I want to do is let the weight off the transmission. You have to be careful sometimes, because when you do that, you have to be careful though sometimes when you do that, the whole assembly may want to swing forward, and then we'll have a lot of trouble getting our motor mount plates in. Alright, so we don't have any pressure on our transmission now. So let's bring it down and see how this goes. One thing we gotta pay attention to, I'll show you. Is these transmission cooler lines, and this wiring harness for the little sensor, which I wish they would do away with. It's just a really useless sensor. I think we'll be okay though. I'm gonna have to keep an eye on it, but you can see right there, that's clearly gonna fall right into that. Alright, we made contact with the frame, and we're not too far off. We gotta push her over a little bit though. So now we've got that stud engaged. So let's go look at the other side. Alright, so I want to make sure that this starter wiring is not under the mount. I want it on top of the mount. Make sure that the wiring harness is free to move around, which it is. Let's go ahead and pry that out of there. So we're good on that now. Let's let her down a little more. So now I've got the weight pretty much on the mount. It's not 100%. And what I'll do is I'll look underneath where the bolts, the nuts go onto the studs of the mounts, because when you sit it in there, you can get the motor like this or like that, you know, or shifted, and I'll just get it nice and relaxed, and the nuts will go exactly in the same spot. This vehicle's a virgin. I mean, nobody's ever done anything to it, which is awesome, because you know, everything's just like when it rolled off the assembly line, you know, 12 years ago. And I'll put the nuts right back where they were, and then, you know, anybody that looks at it in the future, they won't even know this thing's been apart for the most part. There won't be a lot of witness marks and bolts in different spots with different, you know, wear item marks where they make contact. And the only other thing I gotta do, I just gotta double check this stuff under here. You really can't see what I'm doing, but I'm just making sure everything's loose, you know, not bound up, especially on this wiring here. It's really tight down in here where the power wires go to the starter and wiring for the low sensor. Let's see if you can see down here without a light. So here's our ground cable. Here's our power cable. See, I can move those, and then this I can move, and obviously this moves around pretty freely. And then those come up to the front here to this bracket. That's the starter wiring. And then this is the wiring going down to the little sensor. Just want to make sure everything's nice and free and not trapped. There we go. She's in, she's complete, we're done, we don't have to worry about it anymore. Here's the oil cooler coolant hoses, make sure they're not trapped. Now if I was a surgeon, I could pass this off to my assistant and he or she could finish putting them back together. The next step would be to roll it back where it was. There's more daylight out here, but I can't get the drawers open on the toolbox. It's a pain in the neck. So I left that wheel chock right where it's at on purpose. That way it'll spot me. I'll just roll up against that chock and I'm right back where I'm ready to put the cab on. So I put it in neutral and then roll her back. Now normally I would roll the tire. It's easier to roll a tire to move a vehicle, but it puts a little pressure on it, makes the tire turn. And we don't want the vehicle rolling and cattywampus in there. So we'll finish putting this motor together and put the cab back on, and then we'll start it up. Got the engine all back together and the cab back on, all that crap on the 05, and we are getting ready to start it, but you know, the truck sat for a couple years and the fuel nasty, all varnished up, stunk. So I said, hey, let's drain the tank while we're here. Put a new fuel filter and put some fresh fuel in it. Look at the crud coming out of this fuel tank. I've got a hose connected to the fuel supply, and I'm just dumping it into a bottle here. Alright, here we go. Look at that stuff, man. That's like turpentine. Stinks to high heaven. But the truck still burns it, amazingly. Got all the fluids topped off, got everything together. The only thing I got left is the air conditioning. I'm not gonna worry about that right now. Got all the fuel out of it. That's the fuel. Lowly straight turpentine, 84 octane turpentine. Luckily there was only about probably 6.5 gallons in the tank, so it didn't take too long. The customer brought me a 5-gallon container, so this thing probably gets 12 miles a gallon, so it'll be a short test drive. Plus it's got this left front wheel and the right, I notice I got the lug nuts off of it, and the right rear wheel, the calipers are locked up. I had to take the wheels off the problem apart, so that'll probably bring me down to 8 gallons, 8 miles a gallon, so it'll be a real short test drive. Plus there's no license plate on it, the tires are bald, steel cords hanging out of them, and the steering wheel is disgusting. I'd rather stick my hand in a garbage can. So, the only thing left that really is important besides the air conditioning is the fuel filter, and I'm tired of crawling around on the ground, so I'm going to get it running and then bring it over here on this lift, and we'll do the fuel filter, and then I'm going to go drive it and I'll do the air conditioning. So anyway, we're at the point of starting, so let's see if this girl will start.